Hello and welcome to a series of short videos on map reading. These videos are not going to be a really in-depth approach to reading a map, more to give people some handy hints, tips on using a map to feel a little bit safer and to identify where they are on a map should anything go wrong. So first off, a little bit about the Ordnance Survey of Great Britain, OSGB, that produces the maps in the UK. As you can see on the right hand side of the video, the UK is split up into squares, as we can see over here, and each square is 100 kilometres by 100 kilometres. This helps identify which particular area of the country you are in when using your maps. So each of those 100 kilometre squares is also subdivided into 10 kilometre squares. So what I'm going to do using the OSGB desktop map is just go from this scale into a scale that you may be more familiar with. So this is the scale we use for navigating in and around the UK on the road system. So if you've come across these before, it's probably in printed maps by the RAC or the AA or other organisations like that. And I'm just trying to find, there we go, so this is my local area, give or take. I live in this part of the world. Now as you can see, each of the squares is still there. So each one of those 100 kilometre squares is split up into 10 kilometre squares. And that's the scale that we call 1 to 250,000. So 1 centimetre on the map is 250,000 centimetres on the ground. So from this point to this point is 4 centimetres. That's 100,000 centimetres, 10 kilometres in real life. I can go further into the map to get a bit more detail, and we come to what is known as a 1 to 50,000 map, which means that 1 centimetre on the ground equates to 50,000 centimetres on the map. So each of these squares, 2 centimetres equals 1 kilometre. So from that corner to that corner in a straight line is 100,000 centimetres or 1 kilometre. So 2 centimetres to 1 kilometre. I can go further in and I get to the 1 to 25,000 scale, which means that each one of these lines is 1 kilometre still. However, 1 centimetre on the map is 25,000 centimetres on the ground, meaning that 4 centimetres on the map is 1 kilometre. Now the app that I'm using, the desktop app, is the Ordnance Survey desktop app, and I pay about £25, £26, £27 a year to access this, and I can also get this on my mobile device as well. So it's a little bit different than using a paper map, although I still use a paper map. But it allows me to plan my routes, have a look at the areas I intend to walk, gives me a feel of the terrain, and decide whether or not I should buy the paper map if I'm going to walk in that area. These lines, the horizontal lines, are called eastings, and these lines, the vertical lines, are called northings. And we use the eastings and we use the northings to give us a grid square system so that we can identify where we are on the ground. That will be in a later video. Now a map is a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional area. To be able to describe that, we use things like contour lines. So as we can see here, we have some contour lines with the numbers on. Each one of these contour lines is 10 metres apart. So what I'm going to do is just centre those a little bit, zoom in to make it a bit easier for you to see. So this thicker brown line is at 400 metres, and it's 400 metres above sea level. Then the thinner brown lines are 10 metres each till we get to a thicker brown line, and the thicker brown line is at 450 metres, and then the next thick brown line is at 500 metres. And they are called contour lines. Contour lines describe the slope of the ground, whether it's going upwards or downwards. So if the numbers start down at the bottom and they rise, they're going uphill. I can also tell they're going uphill because we have the streams, and water always flows downhill. So it starts up here and it flows downhill and then eventually makes its way to the reservoir. If I find a different part of this map, just on the opposite side of the reservoir, I can see some of the contour lines are closer together and some of the contour lines are further apart. If the contour lines are closer together, it means the slope is steeper. If the contour lines are further apart, it means the slope is gentle. So if I zoom out yet again, and I go north a little bit to this area, now I'm at 1 to 50,000, so I'm going to zoom in again to 1 to 25,000. I've got some very, very defined contour lines and shapes. So for instance, here the contour lines are so close together it's very hard to differentiate them, and that's telling me that that is a very steep slope, if not almost vertical slope. The contour lines here are close together but not as close, which means it's a very steep slope again. However, on the opposite side, the contour lines are further apart, which means it's a gentler slope. So looking at the map, I'm looking and thinking, we have some gentle slopes around here, very, very steep slopes here, and again, gentler slopes around here. I need to be able to visualise what that looks like when I'm looking at the map. So all the contour lines are doing me is trying to give me an indication of the shape of the ground, and using the numbers, the height. And again, the heights are above sea level, so from 795 at Cribben down to 520 there. Now, to help you visualise that, the Ordnance Survey desktop app has a 3D aerial view. So there's the Cribben that I was talking about, and that's the gentler slope on the Cribben. And if I just turn it round, we can see there that that's a gentler slope, and the contour lines on this part were much closer together, therefore it's a steeper slope. If I turn it round again and just move the map a little bit, we can see contour lines on this side of the map were very close together, and on this side of the map were very close together, and on this side of the map were very close together, therefore it's a much steeper slope. But if I turn the map around, we've got a steep slope that side and a gentle slope that side. Now, one of the things that I can't do with these maps is change the orientation in the same way that I can with the aerial map. That's because all of the maps point to what's called grid north, and grid north is what's defined by these lines. So that's the way that we're going to read a map. It's always going to be that way. And again, in future videos I'll show you how to orientate your map so that it's pointing the right way when you're on the ground, either using a compass or just using your eyesight. Now, a map can give us lots of features on the map that will help us identify areas on the ground. So we've got a few here. We've got some blue areas, reservoirs or lakes or streams or rivers. We have roads that are marked, and this is the A40. We have long-range paths that are marked, and this is the Beacons Way. We have local paths that are marked. We have smaller lakes or tarns. We have things like obelisks that are there. We've got cairns that are there. We've got forested areas, and the forested areas will also give me a different idea of what type of forest and what type of trees are there. So I'll zoom in again to make it a bit easier for you to see. And there we go, we'll find an area here. So this area here, we have a waterfall in the woodland. The woodland is denoted by slightly different colour, and we've got symbols of trees. We have symbols of pine trees, coniferous trees, or we have symbols of deciduous trees. So this is telling me that this is a mixed forest or a mixed woodland area. This little area here is all deciduous woodland, and this area here is all coniferous woodland. So that helps me identify which woodland I'm looking at by looking at the trees. Again, when I look at the map, I've got little bits of rock outcrops, which are what these are. So again, if I'm walking on the ground, that's going to give me an indication that I'm in the right place, and there should be little rocky outcrops, little boulders perhaps. Larger rocky outcrops are there, each paper map will come with a set of symbols that tell you what each of these symbols mean. So again, deciduous forest there, coniferous forest there. So all of these grid lines at this 1 to 50,000 map are giving me an indication that this area is very, very steep, it's very, very mountainous, and this is the traditional Brecon beacons that people come to climb, with the almost famous Pen y Fan, which is the highest point in South Wales at 886 metres, and it is very, very steep to get there. I go to the aerial view, the 3D aerial view. You can see how steep Pen y Fan is. It almost looks like a triangle there, with these paths coming up. Very, very steep all the way. So in the next video I'll talk about how to use these grid squares to be able to identify exactly where you are on the ground, using the features on the ground, using a compass, using a piece of equipment called a roamer, and that will help you be able to tell people where you are when you're out walking or wild camping.